to play ball. Welcome to the podcast with no limits. Whether it be sports, current events, or random thoughts, this is the place to step in and stay a while. Your host is a proud alumnus of Rio Hondo Prep, a former minor league baseball umpire, and a man with strong opinions. Welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast and your host, Matt Ursuma.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Get Home Safe. It's a Friday edition of the podcast. That means we have a very special guest for you today. And as a matter of fact, we're having a guest that we've had on the program before, long time ago, over a year ago, when we were new to this whole bringing people on thing. We were trying different people out, and this individual came on as an early guest. But back before we had Zoom or video, YouTube, anything, we were recording through Anchor, and it was just a disaster most times, but he helped me get through it all. John Lee Jr. from, the Eugene area, we'll say. He'll tell us the exact city he's located in up there in Oregon, but John Lee Jr. making a return appearance to the program. And I say John Lee Jr. because his father, John Lee Sr., is such an extraordinary man. I want to make sure that the two, there is a difference between the two, differentiate if I will. John Lee Jr. Himself is a great guy himself. But that's probably the last, when I introduce him, I'll probably refer to him as Junior as well. But John Lee returning to the program, an avid listener of the Get Home Safe podcast, a guy that writes in a lot, and someone that I've grown with as a friend, that I'm very happy about all that. Very blessed to be friends with John Lee Jr., talking with him up in Oregon. And John is going to talk to us today about some of the things going on in Oregon. Yes, there are actually some worse places than California as far as lockdowns and such go. But we're going to talk about kind of what it's been like the past few months there, specifically with, kind of locking down again, if you will, but also some of the serious, in all seriousness, as kids go back to school, there's some pretty significant issues there. And John will fill us in. He is spearheading really some efforts to not have kids up in Oregon be held captive by school city councils and school districts and such. And I'll let him tell you all about that. And then we're also going to get into kind of some theological discussion today. I'm excited about it. Can't wait. I know John has probably been waiting to come on the program, but I'm excited for him to really get into all this and tell me about everything that's going on. So let me not waste any more time. It's a Friday edition of the podcast. Let's get to another fun-filled conversation with our guest this week, Mr. John Lee Jr., joining us all the way up from the Northwest up in Oregon. Okay, today I'm joined with John Lee Jr. from way up in Eugene, Oregon, just outside of it anyway. And John, lots to talk about today, a lot to get to. It's good to have you back. The last time you were here was May 18th, man, of 2020.
Yeah, it's been a while. A lot has happened since then, good and bad.
Yeah, you don't say, man. You don't say. John, you've been a very big supporter of the podcast. You were, I think, the first Lee brother on. Then we went to your brother Bill, then to Ken, and then
order.
In the correct order, right? Yes, exactly. And Ken would say the best for last, but no. And then it was really exciting for me to have your dad on. Guys, or Ken helped put that together, and that was a lot of fun. So what do you make of all three Lee brothers and your father coming on, and you really being the first recurring Lee brother?
Well, obviously I've enjoyed listening to all of their podcasts. And I long for the day when we can get all of us to do something of this nature. And I know Ken's got some of his own, media outlets that he has done some things with us as a family on, that has been a whole lot of fun doing. We're actually getting together this weekend. I'm leaving out Saturday morning, and we are heading out to Park City, Utah, and then up to Yellowstone. And they're driving up from Southern California. We're going to meet there, hang out, like I said, in Utah, and then over in Yellowstone, and then we'll go our separate ways from there. So we'll probably do some videos for Ken stuff at that time, I'm sure.
Absolutely, man. That's outstanding. Yeah, God's country up there. That's beautiful land, and we've all been there a time or two on summer trips and such. But the first time I recorded with you, John, I was still learning. I still am learning. I mean, our audio kind of froze, and we didn't have the video, so this is much more comfortable. And this is something that I know you and I have talked about wanting to do for a while. Bringing you back on the podcast.
Yeah, I love the podcast. Like you said, faithful listener. I basically go between you and one other podcast on a regular basis. So you're in my top two.
I'm honored, man. I really am. You sent me pictures of you in the car listening with on the radio screen and such. I mean, I know you're a huge fan of Bill Barnes, and you send in questions for him, that lunatic. But it took time. But I was able to get a few of your comrades, your cohorts from your high school days. Dave Joe, finally got him. And we're recording this Thursday, the 26th. Who I got coming on tomorrow is Rod Bazuzzi. So a lot of excitement.
I am looking forward to that one. I hope to hear some stories of old, and of course catch up with what he's doing now. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
I have not really ever talked to him before. And
really?
No, I really hadn't. I knew who he was, but he reached out to me randomly on Instagram, said, "Hey, I started listening to your pod. I really like it." And I said, "Well, you got to come on." He said, "We'll get Dave Joe and Pete Clark too." I said, "I got Dave Joe, Pete Clark. I'm tentatively scheduled, so we'll see how that goes."
Good.
What a guy. Got to get Pete on. Absolutely. And I saw Pete at the Mr. Drain retirement party a few weeks ago. And that dude hasn't lost a step. If you had told me he had a heart attack and was on death's door, no one would believe it. The guy is making jokes and I couldn't believe it.
Well, I mean, of all the people to be able to pull through something of that nature and come back with as much life as he has, I mean, he's the guy. He's the guy. And that's the family. That's the family that's going to come back from something like that. I have so much respect for them and appreciation for them, and I'm thrilled that he's doing well, and hopefully many more to come, because he can be the life of the party.
Oh my God, you're right about that. I mean, he spoke at the party, and then he's on video with the video tribute. I don't know if you saw it. He's joking about returning from the grave. I mean,
right.
Who does that? So God bless Pete and the Clark family, and Rod Bazuzzi. You'll talk a little bit about them too. But what a guy, Rod Bazuzzi. I mean, never really talked to him to hear about his law enforcement career. And you might want to tune in a little bit on video, John, on YouTube, because I'm not kidding. He's got a bench press behind him. He's mid set while talking to me. It's hilarious.
No.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And we talked for 2 hours. I'm not even kidding. You're the first one I've told that to, but 2-hour conversation. I mean, crazy.
Wow.
But anyway, John, it's been, like I said, over a year now. Be honest. What are some of how do you feel about the direction the podcast has gone with different guests? I mean, who have been some guests that have stood out? I mean, your loyal listener, probably the most loyal. What's the state of the union with the podcast? Be honest.
So I love, of course, I got to get my Wednesdays in.
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, he makes me laugh. Bill makes me laugh with some of the one-liners. I have no idea where he pulls some of the things he pulls, some of the phrases and everything. So I do enjoy listening to Bill and wrestling with ideas in my mind as he's throwing stuff out and you guys banter back and forth. I particularly liked, at least of late, where you guys have had a little bit of disagreement on some of the vaccine mandates and various things of that nature. But again, that's good. It's good, healthy debate. And makes you think about, okay, well, what do I think about this and why? So love the Wednesdays, and obviously anytime there's an RHP alum, I love to get on and listen to that individual. That's fantastic. But honestly, some of the ones that I have really enjoyed the most are some of your contacts through officiating at different levels. Those individuals have been intriguing to me because you get to hear a little bit about other people's lives and how some of the things that have been going on, especially over the last year, and how people are coping, and how, I don't know, it feels like there's a little bit of a niche almost within that, the umpire officiating world. And for somebody who didn't have a whole lot of love for officials, quite frankly, it's yeah, I may have had a tea or two. It's fun to hear, kind of where people are coming from on that side of things. I've loved listening to that side of it. So that being said, you had a guest on earlier this week that I listened to that I was not thrilled that you had on from Pasadena Poly. To you might as well have told me that I was adopted, because I came away from that going, dang it, now I have to respect Poly and the Poly coach. This is undoing everything in my life that was real and true. So yeah. But no, I'm actually looking forward to you having him on the podcast for a legitimate session. It was very interesting to listen to him, the connections. Yeah, I really, he's the kind of guy I would like to have as a coach.
Yeah.
If I were young again. So anyway, enjoyed him.
Well, I believe you commented on our Facebook page, Get Home Safe Podcast, and your exact words were, John, well, shoot, now I have to respect Poly. Thanks for stealing a perfectly healthy hatred from me. So I thought that quote was fantastic, because we all grew up knowing, you hate Poly, right? Don't want anything to do with those guys. And then someone like Coach Chris Smoke has nothing but praise for the program, has some amazing just philosophies himself. And you know what? Sometimes, John, you can learn a thing or two from the enemy.
Feels like a setup.
It's a trap, right?
Exactly.
But I thought it was hilarious when he started. He was like, yeah, I hope Rio goes 9-1 every year. I was like, that sums up everything perfectly. Like, that's great.
And it's interesting. I thought of this listening to the, not being in the same league anymore. It kind of reminds me of like a USC Notre Dame, has kind of that feel to it.
Yeah.
Where the rivalry should happen. It has to happen, even though they're not in the same league anymore. The game still has to be played.
Yes. And when he
not
said
that Notre Dame, we're in the same league, but
yeah. No, absolutely. And when he said it's the number one, I asked him, sum up the rivalry, and he said it's the number one most important game we do every year. And I was like, that's awesome. And the fact that they want to play Rio in the Coliseum or the Rose Bowl, I mean, that's awesome for the program. And I know, John, was it true back on April 1st when Rio defeated those Panthers in the Rose Bowl, 8-7? I know, baseball score. Did you have yourself a little watch party up in Oregon?
We definitely did. It was our family, and Steve and his family, Steve Ahmed, his family. They were over, and we had the game on, had the pizza, and towards the end of the game there on that last drive, I still remember it was they were still probably 30-35 yards out or whatever, and Steve and I both looked at each other. We're like, if they score 100%, Mark's going for 2. 100%, no doubt in our minds.
That's what was so awesome, was that game, when you get to see the internet broadcasters, people are going to tune in, and Rio Hondo Prep football, small school and this and that, but people all around the country and even maybe the world in some instances are tuning in, because as I've said many times before on the podcast, I like my Rams, I like USC, I like, whoever, but you still have a better connection with the place you went to school, the place you played, you put on that helmet before.
Right. Yeah. So, don't know a single guy in the team personally, but root for him as if they were.
Yes.
My guy.
And the tradition continues. They will do the same, and that's how it should be. So you gave me a little grief about having a guy from Poly on, but I thought it turned out okay, John.
It turned out okay. That's the last one. No Flint Ridge, no Chadwick.
Those guys No. Those guys aren't committed to athletics the way Paulie is. So.
Second tier. That's the second tier.
That's right. That's JV.
Right.
Well, John, we got a lot of things to get to today. The main reason I wanted to bring you on is, you are kind of spearheading an effort right now in Oregon with some school district, city council, whatever it may be. I'll let you fill us in. But I also wanted to have in some of our texts and things, I wanted to have like a theological discussion with you because I think you're someone who's passionate about it and can understand kind of where I think you provide answers to people who maybe are either on the fence about their faith or maybe have drifted away or are curious. You know what I'm trying to say? So
Yes.
those are kind of the two main topics I wanted to discuss today, but anything that we dive into, of course, nothing's off the table here. But first off, let's dive into some recent news for you. What exactly are you leading the charge on there in Oregon?
So I'll give a little bit of background. Obviously, over the last year, with the schools and everything doing what transpired, my kids are at home and they are quite frankly floundering educationally. And you're thinking, okay, well, we're going to come out of the other side of this here at some point, and things are going to get back to normal. And my oldest was pretty athletic. He was running cross country and track and field. He had aspirations of running collegiately, and all of this is being stolen from him. Thankfully, they were able to have I'll call it a pseudo track season. They had, I think it was 5 track meets in total. He ended up doing well enough that he is going to be running collegiately, but that was nearly stolen from him. And that was very motivating for him. So there was that aspect of it. Again, the education was severely hampered on all sides. And there just wasn't, I didn't feel like the superintendent locally, my kids go to the public school, the superintendent and the school board were not fighting to get the kids back in school. That was not their objective. Their objective, and it was conveyed in emails, is, well, this is what we are being allowed to do. This is what we are being told to do. And at some point, when you are the steward of lives, you have to step out and risk. You have to, you signed up for this job. So it's time for you to push back. If you care about these kids, push back. I'm not saying do anything illegal or anything of that nature, but scratch and claw, find a way to help these kids to get a legitimate education and not this token education. If I walk into my living room and I see my son playing a video game as he is looking past his computer screen, fully engaged in the class and passing, but yet be able to play a video game at the same time, of course, I cut it off and said, hey, turn it off. But if he's capable of doing that, then he's not being educated. So I'm watching all of this transpire. We're coming into this new year, and it's more of the same up here in Oregon as it was last year. They're going to have the kids wear masks, which that in itself isn't a deal breaker necessarily, but there's no need for these kids to be wearing masks all day. That's not healthy for them. It's not. People can argue that all they want, but it's not healthy for a child to wear a mask all day long. So there's that aspect of it. The graduation requirements recently here in Oregon have been altered, and quite frankly, in my opinion, are being dumbed down.
That blew my mind, John, when I heard that they were lowering the requirements. Now, right. I mean, you graduated high school, your wife, your family, everyone. Now it's like, I mean, not to say your kids couldn't fulfill requirements, but now you almost look at that diploma as like, does this mean as much as it once did? No,
not even close. So here's an example of how bad the education is. If I take my kids out and I put them in a homeschool setting, the they have to take a test to continue to progress through the system, if you will, to show that they're being educated. I'll give you one guess, and I'll give you a wide berth of percentage, which is, what percentage do you think they have to score on their test to pass and move on to the next grade level?
One test, or
you get 0 to 100, 100 being a perfect score on the test. What percentage do you have to get to pass and move to the next grade?
I'm gonna go low and say 50%.
That's not low. The answer is 16%.
Oh my.
1/6.
16.
Yes. 1/6. 16%. That's all they have to score on the test to be able to move on to the next grade if you are in a private homeschool setting. Not private school, a homeschool setting.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's absurd. So I look at all of these things going on. I go, I'm not going to sit by and wait for something to happen. So I was grousing with another individual, another father locally, about it, and we were going back and forth, and it was kind of like we're both looking at each other, say, you know what? Why are we still whining and complaining about this? Let's do something about it. So we started reaching out, and in various forms or fashions, reaching out to a variety of individuals within the community and say, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to get a gathering. We have some ideas of what we think it should look like, but we want to get a group of parents who are willing to step up and do something for their kids. And we had a bunch of ideas of how we thought it should look. And ultimately right now, I think we have, I think the number is 42 parents, 42 sets of parents that are pulling their kids out of the public school. And we have, I think there's 9 different homeschool curriculums that we have links for, various charter schools, because what we're not trying to do is dictate to these families how and what they should be educating their children on. What we want is to provide an avenue for the parents to be able to control their child's destiny in that regard, as far as their education is concerned, to put the control back into the parents' hands as it should be. So we have a website, and all of all the links are on there for the various school options. And ultimately, we are creating pods where if we have enough kids, we will have a pod of all seniors, of all juniors. If we don't have enough, then it'll be juniors and seniors combined, or juniors and sophomores combined. It just depends how many kids total are able to be in these different age brackets, because the goal ultimately is the educational, emotional, and relational flourishing of the kids. Number 2 is to have our voices heard. So when we pull these kids out, there is a financial hit to the local school. 42 sets of parents. Got my little calculator here. Say it's 2 kids per. It's $8,000 that goes to the school. Times 8,000. What is that? $656,000 worth of state funding that gets pulled. And that's a way for our voice to be heard. I don't think protests do a whole lot anymore. I think people are kind of burnt out and they don't listen. It's just another protest. You know, other than a cool cardboard sign, what do you really get out of it? So we're not going that route. We're looking to make an impact. And this is kind of our way to do it. So the flourishing of the kids, the voice is heard by having an impact. And lastly, trying to have as little impact on the families associated with this as possible. And we had a gathering about a week and a half ago. And no, actually it was a week ago exactly. And the the whole thing is this is going to take sacrifice. There's no way that we can do something of this nature and it not necessitate people to actively be involved. For years, we've dropped our kids off at the bus stop and basically handed them off to the public school system to babysit and educate them until 3:00. And that day has come and gone, and we have to get involved now as parents. And so we are gathering a list of folks that are can shuttle, because some parents, you get 2-parent households that might work. Both parents are working. So we have people that will be driving kids to different places. We're going to be having different people open up their homes to be able to house. We have a couple people who I just had one this morning. He's a concrete guy. He says, I have a shed that I was going to build in the backyard here in the next month. We can make it into a pseudo schoolroom. So everybody's going to have to step up in this regard. But the whole objective, like I said, is how do we make this a better situation for our kids? Because they're going to be robbed of all of these things. And the other thing that we've been working hard on is making sure that there are still the extracurricular options for the kids: sports, music,
Yes.
drama, you name it, all of those things. And so we have a bunch of different connections in that regard. Homeschoolers still have local access to their public school to be able to do the sports and the music and the drama. So anybody that does the true homeschool has that ability. Charter schools, I think, is a little bit different because functionally it's still a public school, and there are some hurdles to jump through there. But we're working through that, and it's hard on the kids because they don't always understand it, especially the younger ones. My oldest boy, my oldest boy is now in college, but the oldest boy that's still in the public school system, he's on board for it 100%. He said, "Yeah, I don't want to have anything to do with the public school anymore. Get me out." So he was the easy one. But anyway, that's basically what we're doing. It's been a learning process. It's been a big bite to chew, and it feels like a very large responsibility for the impact that it could have on like I said, 42 families and their lives. So yeah.
Well, John, I applaud your courage, man. This is going on all over the country, so there has to be kind of a motivating factor in that, and that you're seeing it in other places. I know that, homeschooling always had this like connotation really of like, oh, you're a homeschool kid, right? But
right.
I don't think it has that stigma anymore. Now it is like, okay, you got out for a reason. And I know, like, I'm a big Dennis Prager, I got my Prager U shirt on here. He's very big on this. Get kids out of public school, no matter the cost. I've heard Candace Owens say it. A lot of different commentators and podcast radio hosts talk about it. But to your point, it's not easy.
Right.
To families that work, both my parents work. That's why Care Youth League was so beneficial to me. And Rio Hondo Prep is going to a place where they trusted, and so, man, it's got to be difficult for you. Like you take the guy who built the shed. You got to be able to contribute any way you can. You got to fight if you really do feel that the school system, the public school system is a threat, which I know you guys do, and hitting them in the pocketbook to kind of sum up everything. That's really the only language people understand sometimes.
Right. And that's just it, isn't it? Because quite frankly, the school boards aren't listening. They're not listening. And until it makes an impact to them, you could have 100 parents stand in line and get their 5 minutes of pounding the podium, and it doesn't have an impact. And so you have to do something that has an impact that still carries with it some ethical and moral weight behind it versus, again, like I said, protests really don't go far, and there's no sense in getting in somebody's face. That's not going to do anything anymore. But yeah, like I said, the school boards are legitimately not listening. And I know me personally, I was emailing the board on a pretty regular basis, trying to get answers on certain things. And, even so far as asking about critical race theory and things of that nature, because the board meetings themselves were not accessible because of COVID, supposedly. So they wouldn't even have an open forum. It was just, you can email your question, and if they got to your question, they would get to it. So I would send emails on a regular basis asking all these questions. And I was not the only one, but I was one of multiple individuals who received an email from the school board lawyer saying that I was asking too many questions, which could be perceived as harassment. Therefore, I'm no longer welcome to email the board. So apparently asking too many questions about my children's education is not appropriate. And they don't want to hear my voice anymore. So they're not done hearing my voice. They're just going to hear it in a different way.
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to start a revolution or anything, but we all have to use the weapons that we can to combat what we've really seen this past year, maybe 8 months or so, arguably. But I'm not talking violence or anything. I'm talking just the weapons to combat what is being thrown at us. I mean, what kids are taught in school these days, and also not taught, is mind-boggling to me. I hear stuff every day about what's in the classroom. Meanwhile, I heard up in Oregon, math is racist or something. Was it
apparently
two plus? I was like, 2 + 2 is 4. What? The right answer is racist? Like, I don't understand how that has anything to do with that. So
all this time, my dad's been a racist. Who knew?
Those math teachers, man, I tell you. No, I mean, we joke about it, but unfortunately, John, I've heard all kinds of news from Oregon. I live in the Socialist Republic of California, which you used to, and or California, as they say. But Oregon has made headlines quite a bit as well. It's been crazy.
I don't understand. I thought, there's a lot I thought about moving up here, and I never thought I would move out of California. And once we moved up here and kind of started getting settled in, it's like, I actually really like it up here, and I like the people. And sometime in the last 5 to 8 years, it has just become insane. And I am legitimately looking at other options and going, where are we going to move to? Because I don't know that I can continue, living in a place like the People's Republic of Oregon. So.
No, I heard the other day, John, I mean, your beloved governor, and I say that begrudgingly, but your governor is mandating outdoor masks now because the cases are spiking. Now, Florida and Texas get all the media coverage because they've lifted all this stuff. And so, we're always pinpointing their case levels or their case, whatever it is. But Oregon, Hawaii, they don't get any kind of coverage when they have some of the most severe lockdowns out there.
Yeah. I apparently up here, the virus is kind of like fog. It's just floating in the air. So you have to wear it at all times. You got to wear the mask at all times. It's everywhere. It's not a person to person transmittable disease. It's just floating in the air, and you need to wear the mask everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So
I saw photos, I think, of, maybe it was you sent me, or there were some other photos floating around, but like your oldest son, he said he ran track. Kids running track. There was a kid who passed out like just for the finish line running with a mask on him. It's like, what are we doing?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's legit. That was in Prineville, where the kid collapsed right at the finish line. And she actually said, she goes, yeah, all of a sudden I just kind of blacked out, and down she went. Yeah. I mean, in insane things, like with wrestling, they were allowing wrestling to take place and they didn't have to wear the mask during the meet, but they didn't want them to shake hands at the end of the match because they might give each other the virus. I'm like, if they didn't give it to each other during the match itself, I doubt the handshake is going to be the thing that puts it over the edge.
And I mix up the two if it's Oregon or Washington, but because they're kind of the same. But like there was, I think it was high school football last year. Weren't masks required on the players under their helmets or something, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That was here in Oregon. It's
like, and a team stormed off the field because they thought the coaches were like, their players are trying to kill us because they're not wearing masks. It's just like, this is insanity. What do we do? I mean,
no, it doesn't make any sense. And there's so much about the response that is just posturing, is political theater. I don't understand where all of that comes from, but I'm not a follower in that regard. So I unfortunately enjoy a good fight here and there.
Well, that probably has something to do with your last name and
it might.
Just a little bit, but that's cool, man. God bless you for doing that. I know more people are doing it. I can't imagine. You said your oldest son graduated. You have two other teenagers. Is that correct? Okay.
Seventh, going into seventh and going into junior.
Okay. So some big years upcoming for them. And I think what a lot of people are coming up against with this whole pulling their kids out of school is, if not now, then when, right?
Yep.
Like how much worse could it get, which is a scary thought, but if not now, then when?
Right. And they are, you look at it and you say, okay, well, it's just 2 weeks to slow the spread. It's just a mask. It's just a vaccine. It's just what? When is the just this? It's the boiling frog process here that's going on. And, at some point you say, okay, well, I think it was my dad texted me here, something about there is scuttlebutt that they're going to push for private schools who are not teaching critical race theory to have their accreditation removed. Now, that's scuttlebutt. I don't know if that will ever come to fruition, but what it tells you is they're looking to control. They are looking to control the education of the kids, and it is a play out of every fascist nation's playbook, is to come for the youth, re-educate the youth. And quite frankly, the kids are being conditioned right now into subjection, because I'll see kids wearing masks more than I'll see people of my age wearing a mask out and about, because the kids are obedient. It's just a mask. It's not that big of a deal. And they don't understand the slow play. They don't understand the long-term effects that relinquishing your freedoms one by one results in. It's Animal Farm all over again, if you've ever read that book.
Well, and to an extent, it's also, they're young, they have fragile minds. We train them at a young age. Hey, you need to do what you're told to your superiors. Now we have these superiors that are telling them to do things. And for some of them, I've seen kids, they're like, if I take if I take this mask off, I might die. Like, that's in their mindset. And that's to manipulate children like that. I mean, there's a lot of evil going on around. We'll just keep it to our country here. And the whole manipulation of children and propagandizing children, or however it's supposed to, the phrase is evil in the purest form, because you and I came from an organization that was trying to build up kids and train them to be better leaders and adults, not to, as you said, manipulate their minds, because they are so fragile. And, the innocence really of children has been under attack constantly, right. Especially in schools for years now.
Correct. And school has become a place to teach kids what to think instead of how to think. and it needs to be reversed. Kids
good.
need to know how to think through and come up with the correct course of action based off of their ability to critically think through something. That's what education is supposed to be. It's not, you don't teach kids what to think about every situation, because then you're just creating robots, which again, I think that's part of the end game, is to create little obedient servants and people who will do what they're told, when they're told, how they're told. And I'm not going to sit idly by and let that happen in my little tiny neck of the woods up here. And we're seeing it across the country in various places, and hopefully it grows.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious where you learned all that, stepping outside, thinking outside the box and stepping off the ledge, being a leader. I mean, wherever you learned all those things, John, definitely pass them along to others, because that's great traits to have. As again, talking to so many Rio Hondo grads, I constantly see the results of kind of the game, results of what was being planned all along, as far as training kids to become great young adults, to become leaders in their adult life. And really, I mean, you can't argue with the results. I mean, you and your brothers, who we've talked about, Rob Bazuzzi coming on the program on Friday, a lot of guys in police work, a lot of nurses, a lot of just coaches. I mean, what Rio Hondo and Care Youth League has done and really shaped young adults to serve others is pretty extraordinary. And I wish there were more Care Youth Leagues and Rio Hondo preps out there.
Yeah, and hopefully some of this stuff will take root, and parents will start again reclaiming control of their kids' lives, recognizing that the public school system is not a good tool to help your kids grow. Not anymore anyway. And whether that be private school, whether that be a homeschooling co-op, a charter school, whatever the case may be, parents need to be actively involved in the raising of their children, in the character formation of their children, because all of this changes in a generation, and we can see the results of a passive generation right now. The country is what it is right now with all of its chaos, because we've handed out too many trophies and things of that nature.
Well, I kind of want to tie in our other subject here with that. And I'm a firm believer that, as the country has gone away from kind of our Judeo-Christian values, we've drifted away from that. I think society has become a lot worse. I mean, you can't argue with the results now. We used to say the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe even say a prayer in schools. Now those things are completely off the table. And those are just a couple of examples. So I know I talked to you about some, theological questions here, or I kind of gave you some prep. And I know, John, you're a guy that loves to be prepared. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail, as
there you go,
as we've learned before. So you got a ton of notes ready to go with this conversation.
I do. I'm ready. Hit me.
So, John, why is it? Where do I go? Okay, you see this in people, but we've seen it in schools, government, even. And I know we're supposed to have the separation of church and state, blah blah blah. But so what are your thoughts there on? Okay, we're supposed to be separation of church and state, but also our founding. I mean, in God we trust. I read it somewhere. There was I think it was on some currency somewhere. I mean, it's also such a big part of our foundation and our society really is kind of our religious background, Christianity background mostly. So how do you, combat or kind of argue that it is important for us to have Christian values really in our nation, when you got another side of the aisle saying, no, separate it all. We can't have that.
Right. So first, there is nowhere in our founding documents that says anything about the separation of church and state. Nowhere. That phrase was used in a letter from Jefferson. So number one, it's that phrase has been misused over the last probably 50, 60 years. Beyond that, when you look at our founding documents, it talks about freedom of religion, but there's a very distinct difference between freedom of religion and freedom from religion, if that makes sense. Now,
Yes.
there is, I can be in office and I can hold Christian values and I can push Christian values and I can pray and I can do all of those things as a citizen elected to office. That does not mean that that individual is promoting, or that the office itself is promoting a religion. So, I mean, we can get way into the weeds on this one, but the, you know, when you look at the founding fathers with all of their qualities and with all of their flaws, they recognized that a healthy nation is a moral nation. They recognized that. And the references to God and his sovereignty, and that our rights are not derived from the government, they are derived from God. The government's job is to make sure we don't lose those God-given rights. That's the government's role when it comes to rights. And so that's why I have some issues with you know, the mandates and things of this nature, because there are rights that are being stripped away. And that's not the government's job. The government's job is not to, you know, protect us from every possible whatever. So I think there's a little bit of a issue where the government has begun over the last however long it's been now, stepping into the role of God and declaring themselves as the one to dictate what rights individuals have. And people, I mean, you see it in the election cycle. There is a religious fervor behind whatever candidate is up for office, and how they follow the individual who is currently in office or was in office, and all that. There's a religious fervor behind it. And part of that is because government has slipped into a role that it really had no place being in the first place.
That's really good stuff. And, you know, for example, I mean, I think it is important for our society to have these, to kind of embrace our traditions, we'll say. But I also understand that, like, when there's a fire, I don't absolutely need a Christian fireman to show up. The dude's an atheist. I just want him to do the job, protect me, save me from a burning building. So as far as our leaders go, while I think it is valuable if kind of that is their foundation and their belief system, because it's similar to mine and generations before us, I don't think it's necessarily absolutely needed. However, I do think there is benefit to us when we're not afraid to talk about God. We're not afraid to talk about religion. I mean, even if you're not religious, let's look at the 10 Commandments. Is there anything on there that someone who's an atheist would argue with? Maybe one or two or half of one. I don't know. But like, that's
probably the first two.
Probably the first. Yeah. Those are pretty good guidelines though, as far as, okay, I don't believe in God, but yeah, this makes sense. Right. There's
value. There's value in the moral baseline within Christianity. And I think the problem is it's the old, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater when people look at Christianity and say, we can't have that infiltrating our society. And they're saying everything about it is bad. It's no different than some of the issues going on when it comes to race within this country. They're saying, oh, well, there were racists within our founding the founding of our nation. Therefore, everything about our nation needs to be undone and thrown away. It doesn't compute. And to your point, the 10 Commandments: don't lie, don't steal, don't murder, honor your parents. These are good things. There's no reason why we shouldn't all be desiring those types of behaviors out of people.
Well, I think that the people who are skeptical of religion and Christianity, they often paint it with a broad brushstroke, and they think that, well, they feel this way about this group of people, or they preach hate, or they want you to pursue living for others instead of a good career or whatever. Like, I think ultimately, John, people see what they want to see. They don't have an open mind and an open heart, even though that's preached to us today on a daily basis. Open
Right.
your hearts to everyone.
Right. Everyone, but they never say that, but that's the reality of it.
So I want to ask you, let's see, maybe you can tie this in here. Help me out here. What makes people, no, okay, I'll ask it this way. What makes people drift away? And I am saying the word religion. You can, we could say Christianity if you want, but I think it goes to all faiths really. But what makes people drift away from their faith? And then also, what makes people drift towards faith? People that never really considered it, but then later in life, they find it. What is your experiences, your thoughts on the people who were in it, but drifted away, and then those who were never in it, but were drawn to it?
I think anything that we place value on, we pursue. So the reality is, if somebody is drifting from faith, then they have lost their perception of the value of what it is that they were pursuing prior. They don't see it as precious to them anymore. And I know for me personally, anytime that I have, behaved outside of the tenets of my faith and within Christianity, it's always because I've lost that bit of being enamored with Christ and being captured by the glory of God, if you will. And so when that is, it's the old what is that? Ulysses and Odysseus, I think, is the story where they're going through where the sirens are at, and Ulysses is tied to the mast because he wants to hear him. Well, he is desiring the sirens, even though he is tied to this mast. He can't get to it. The rest of the sailors have earplugs in, whereas Odysseus, he hires the greatest harp player in the world, and the harp player is playing such beautiful music that the sirens don't call to him and his crew. He is so enamored with the music being played that he doesn't drift to the sirens and ultimately to the rocks to his destruction. It's because there is something that is more important that he's focused on. And so when people drift from faith, it's because they have lost something of the value of what it was that was within that faith. Now, the question is, was the value really ever there? Or was it manufactured by circumstance, obligation? You see this all the time with kids that grow up in the church. Well, there's an obligation. I grew up in the church. We go on Sundays and then Wednesday nights for this, and I don't cuss. I don't do this. I don't. The question is not what are you removing from your life to adhere to all of these things, but do I desire the things of God? Do I desire those? Because if you desire something, you're going to pursue it. And that's just human nature. We do what we want. We chase after what we want. That's the reality of it. So, you know, and I tell people that all the time, is like, we always do what we want all the time. People say, well, no, I was forced to do this. Really? Tell me something you were forced to do. Let's try this. Tell me something that you did that you didn't want to do.
Well, I could think of a few things at CARE when I was in RHLA that were the case.
Go ahead, name the thing. Name the thing.
Okay. I like had this secret. I despised like setting up for things, whether it be a wedding,
Yes.
even CARE Youth Church, Youth Church Saturday nights. I was like, we had to do this every other week or whatever. And I know I'm supposed to have a you know, my heart shouldn't be this way, but I was just like, let's just get this done. And then people would make it into the social hour. And I'm just like, I don't want to be here. And then I started to get bitter and my heart would be hardened. I'm like, I'm setting up a church service. I shouldn't feel this way, but that was me. I mean,
so you were forced to do something you didn't want to do, correct?
Yeah.
What was the alternative?
I could have left the organization and walked away and been somewhere. Been like,
did you want to stay in the organization?
So I made the choice to get through it, to do it because I wanted to stay there, coach. Right. I felt called there. Yeah, I see your point.
You wanted to do something more than the thing that you didn't want to happen.
Yes.
You chose a want over a different one. Out. You wanted both. You wanted not to do the thing, to have to set up, but you also wanted to stay in the organization at that time. So you made a choice of one want over another.
Well, like college, same thing. I mean, I didn't want to go to class. I started to get fed up with it. I was like, I don't want to do this, but I knew ultimately the goal was, okay, you want to graduate. You want to get this done, right? You don't want to be a failure. Like, get it done. No one was forcing me to go to class. No one was forcing me to turn in things on time, but ultimately the end result was, well, you have a choice. You can walk away from this. You can be a dropout or finish. And so to your point,
there was something that, and there was, because there was something that you valued.
Yes.
You saw the value in something that was greater than this other thing that might have been a want also, but you gave the one up for the one that was of greater value. So when we drift from faith, it's because primarily the thing that we thought there was value in, we look at and go, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, and for you, John, you've been married many years now. You got 3 kids. I mean, you know, family man and everything. You're, you know, a great career. I mean, there's got to be things on a daily basis that you do that you don't want to do. You're like, I don't want to go do this. You know, whatever it is. It could be the trash, the dishes, picking up a kid. I don't know. It could be anything. But you ultimately know that, I don't know, in a way, what you signed up for this and you know it benefits you in some way, right?
Well, there is, because I value my wife and I value, so to bring it back to Christianity, when you go through the book of Ephesians, towards the end of the book, it talks about you know, the various roles, and one of the things it says, husbands, love your wives in the same manner as Christ loved the church. Well, how did Christ love the church? Well, he died. He gave up everything. He gave up his position within heaven to stoop down, to become man, to die a humiliating death for the redemption of his church. Because he loved mankind, he was willing to step down and sacrifice himself.
Yes, sacrifice is the big word there.
He valued humanity so much that he was willing to go to that length. So that's the calling of a husband, is I love her so much, I'm willing to take out the trash. It's not that big of a sacrifice.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
When you compare it, but that's the calling. Take out the trash, you know, do the dishes, do the things because I love her, not out of obligation. Because if it's out of obligation, then there's going to be resentment.
That's a good point. Like doing something because you have to. This is a great discussion. I'm going to look at things a little differently now. Like, oh, I got to go do this. Well, do you really have to? you don't
Nope.
have to. It's
Nope.
up to you to. So that's good. I got to use that one. I'm going to use that one for sure. Man, we all learn things here on the podcast. Let me see here. We wrote down a few things and just kind of brainstorming. This is one that's always interested me, John, and I know. Again, we know each other, but not that much in depth or
Right.
whatever, background wise and everything. I've always found this one to be interesting. When God speaks to you,
Mm,
you know, we've all seen Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner hears the voice. You know, jokingly, is it like that, or is it? Do you see signs? Do you feel a conscience tugging at something tugging at your heartstrings? Like, what is it in your experience? Was when because there are times, I'll be honest, I thought God was talking to me, and maybe it was just my own little ambition or whatever. So, what's been your experience with that?
so you don't hear voices then?
No,
Yeah, me
I
neither.
don't.
Me neither. Me neither. So I think that's a really interesting question because I think it's rare that God would speak audibly. Now, if he's God, can he? If he's God, yes. If he really, if he's the God of the universe, then yes, he can. So the question is, how many times did God speak in the Bible? People always say, well, does God speak to you? You go, okay, well, did he speak often in the Bible? How long were the were the Jews in Egypt and in slavery?
Oh,
Without
man.
400 years.
So I would say 200. Yeah, 400 years. Okay.
400 years with nothing. Radio silence. Between the book of Malachi and the book of Matthew, another 400 years of silence.
Wow.
So when you think about it, when you actually go and you look at the Bible and you look at the length of time that the Old Testament was, there really isn't a lot of God speaking audibly within that. So it's a difficult subject because again, we don't always know for certain that was God speaking to me. Now, people, I think prayer is an interesting. I've struggled with prayer. I'll be honest with you. Prayer is tough because it's a one-way conversation in large part. Because you're not hearing, there's not a back and forth. There's not a dialogue like we're doing.
Feedback. Yeah.
And really what I have come to understand what prayer is trying to, the goal is to align my will with God's will. And I think the reading of the Bible obviously helps to understand what his will is. And I think that's the beginning of it. But no, I've never heard God speak. I have obviously through my conscience, through understanding of the Bible, and had that I'll say the voice in the back of my head saying, no, you know better than that. That's always been there. But does God speak to us? Yes, and I think here's the thing. When you look at the Old Testament and all of the things that transpired in that time frame, you jump forward to the book of Hebrews, which does a lot of referencing into the Old Testament, a lot. Hence the title of the book. But it starts like this. I'm just going to read this. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son. So the purpose of God speaking throughout the Old Testament in various ways and fashions and forms and actions ultimately was all pointing to one event, which was Jesus coming and ultimately the cross where salvation occurred for mankind. So in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. So it's talking about Jesus's grandeur and all of this. And then it says, after making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. So there's this speaking to us throughout the course of the Jewish history. Now, people get wrapped up in the Jews being the chosen people. I mean, that's who God was saving. No, the objective was the saving of mankind. The vessel of that message was the Israelite nation. That was the vessel. In the book of Hebrews, it changes and says the vessel is now the church. It is the people of Christ that are now that vessel to display his message. So I'm kind of going off in the weeds here a little bit. So the thing that I find very interesting about this passage is it says, after he made purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God. So when you look at the temple back in the day for the Jews, there was a progression of worship. It started at the gate. You would go through, and there was what they called the showbread. There was the lampstand. There was the water. And if you remember all of Jesus's statements, he says, I am the way, meaning I am the gate. He says, I am the bread of life. I am the light. I am, to the woman at the well, I will give you living water. So he makes all of these statements, and he's basically walking us through this progression of worship to the very end, which takes you into the very deepest part of the temple, which is the Holy of Holies place, where once a year the high priest would make a sacrifice for the sins of the nation, the totality of the people. And that happened once a year, but it was continuous. It was continuous. And that was the thing. There was no furniture in that inner room minus the Ark of the Covenant. There was no chair. So when it says, when Jesus made purification for our sins, which is the exact terminology it uses with the high priest, it says he made purification for our sins and he sat down. It basically is telling us there is an end to this continual need for sacrifice for sins. It acknowledges sin, but it's saying we don't need to keep going through this practice. At the cross, he says, it is finished. And this is exactly what he is referencing. So when it says that Jesus spoke to us in these last days, what it's saying is, I did it. I'm here to rescue you. This is the method of how you are saved from eternal destruction. So when Jesus speaks, it's not necessarily an audible voice, but they say actions speak louder than words. This is the ultimate in communication. Took a long time to get there, but
wow. No, I love the prep work, and yeah, getting to the point there. That's powerful stuff. And I often remember that my buddy Renzo Roel did a poem about Elijah and the still small voice, and it was something that was just so powerful. Renzo did a great job with that, and how sometimes in theory it is this small voice, it's not really a voice, but it's something
right.
that is inside you that you've known all along,
right.
to an extent. And it's just like, okay, yeah, I should. I got to be honest, John, a lot of times I pray the most or when I'm afraid, when I'm scared. And yes,
Yep.
I'm 36, and yes,
but why do you pray when you're scared? What do you recognize in that moment?
A fear that I need something more than me. I need
Yes.
protection. I need,
yes.
right. There's a
need that needs to be filled by somebody outside and greater than yourself.
yes.
And so when we see ourselves rightly within the light of what God says is sin and what our needs are in that regard, it will cause us to pray more, because we will recognize I can't get through a day on my own living correctly.
Yeah.
And so when the more we realize that, the more we realize our need, the more we are driven to pray and say, hey, I'm about to go into this meeting and this guy is really pressing my buttons. God, I need your spirit to calm my spirit so that I can speak truthfully, but that I can speak it with love and respect instead of just wanting to verbally punch somebody in the mouth. So
no, ultimately, I mean, thy will be done, I think, is something that should really be in every prayer, not just the Lord's Prayer, but like we selfishly request things. We want things. Hey, I want this promotion, or I want, I don't know, I want whatever. And it's just like, but your will, right? And it's funny how, do we really mean that? Do we,
you're right.
It's that inner struggle. Like, I know it's your will, but I really, really want this, almost like a kid at Christmas time, asking Santa for something, I mean, these are great topics here, John. Appreciate you diving into it with me, because there's times, I mean, my faith has been questioned over the years. Definitely. I think that where a lot of people, to kind of come back to it, where people either drift away from their faith or are drawn to faith, unfortunately, is like when tragedy strikes, when something negative happens to us or loved ones. It's like, is there really a God there? Does he care? And then on the other side, I think people get drawn to him, to religion, to Christianity, because there's this emptiness. They feel like they have nothing left, no other path to go to. So that's my take on kind of why that happens.
No, and again, it's in those moments that we recognize I don't have control, and I need something greater than myself. And that, I think that it is those moments, that, like they say, there's no atheists in foxholes. It's in those moments that we're looking for rescue. I need somebody to rescue me. And the unfortunate part is, most of the time we only recognize it in a temporal way. We're looking at the here and the now. Today I need help. There's this diagnosis. We as a family up here, we went through a really rough patch. My wife Stephanie and her brother Steve and their dad passed away here not too long ago. 2 weeks later, their mom fell and broke her pelvis in 2 places. She moved in with us while she was in the healing process. Within a week of her moving in, I went into surgery to remove, I had apparently had quite the quarry in my gallbladder. And so I had gallbladder surgery. They removed it. But it was that whole process of dealing with that. And then, shortly after that, I hear about Pete Clark going down. And so I have this, this struggle of all of these negative things happening almost all at once. I mean, it was week upon week upon week where things were happening. I actually, I don't know if I can find it quick enough, but I wrote a poem in the midst of all that, because I felt like, when you look at time and the time that we have available, it is very, very fleeting. And I had a conversation with somebody. We actually started a church service at our home because I was frustrated with the church we were going to, and they just weren't pushing to worship and come together. Yeah. And I thought that there was value in that. So I wrote a poem. I haven't found it yet. Give me just a second. Yeah.
The theologian and the poet, John Lee. How about you, man? That's awesome.
The poems are rare, and when they do come, they come really quickly. All right, so here we go. Time is an illusion. It lies right to our face. We come and we go, leaving hardly a trace. Some become heroes and legends of the past, but nothing is forever. Nothing really lasts. The hourglass tips over. The sand begins to fall. Days turn to decades, and yet time seems to crawl. Time is an illusion. Time will not stand still. It heeds not, obeys not, yet for one, it most certainly will. The great timekeeper, the creator of all things, as time seems to run out, has removed death's sting. Though eternal and timeless, he is with me now. Though strife threatens continuous, his presence calms, I know not how. His love consumes and brightens like nothing else can, and through troubled waters he promised, God's dwelling place is with man. This is our sure hope. He has come to seek and to find. So it is to him we cling, for he lays out the sands of time. And it struck me as I was writing that, because it was on the heels of all of these things happening, how the reality is we get so caught up in today and in the mundane things of life that we are not looking for the great things, the beauty in life, the glory that exists in life, the relationships and the joy that can be had in relationships. And we don't savor those moments, knowing that they will dissipate and go away at some point. What I wouldn't give and what you wouldn't give to have another day, you know, with my mom, with your mom. And it's, you know, the reality of life is death comes for us all. That is the reality. And so what all religion in my mind has to answer is, what does it mean when we die? Is this the end, or is there something beyond? And if there is something beyond, what is it? And how does that impact me today? My opinion, Christianity answers that question far and above any other religion. And I think it does it with a resounding answer. Again, back to the victory cry at the cross, it is finished. This is the answer to death. Ultimately, is the resurrection and redemption of mankind, ultimately to spend eternity with God. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I didn't grow up in a very religious home. I mean, my parents, they believed in God, and they, you know, we went to church occasionally, but it wasn't until really got involved in Rio Hondo where it became more out there. It became more of an approachable subject, really, and just kind of, you almost were living that Christian life without really being indoctrinated yet.
right.
At least that was my experience. And so I got to ask you, John, as someone who has, 3 teenagers now, is it a challenge? Well, you've already talked about their whole school situation, but is it a challenge really to, like anybody with their teenagers, we were all teenagers once, like you have your doubts, you have your emotions, you know, you have these, you're changing, you're changing physically and emotionally, you know, on a daily basis. So have you found that it's a challenge really for kids, teenagers really, to accept this whole concept of Christianity, of that there is something bigger than this world, and that something that guides their value system?
Yes and no. I think everybody, if they are honest, knows that there is something bigger and outside of ourselves that exists. You know, there's people who say they are atheists don't live like a true atheist, because that would just mean that we are animal. It just means we're animals, which means there is no moral anything. Why would there be? And you can get into that philosophical kind of back and forth in that regard. Because really, if you're an atheist, well, then it's just about protecting the herd. That's it. It's survival of the fittest. So, well, yeah, that's what, euthanasia and abortion and all of this, it falls right in line with, it's just survival of the fittest. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But
Well, I'm sorry, and my thought is like on atheists or even an agnostic, whatever the term is, if you really believe this is it, this is all that, there's nothing after this, I would think you would be living life to the absolute fullest. You'd be skydiving every other day. You'd be, I don't know, doing all kinds of crazy things instead of just going through the motions of life.
Right. Exactly. Because aside from pleasure, what's the point? There is no purpose or point beyond personal pleasure. Why would sacrifice be a thing of value to an atheist? It doesn't compute. So as it pertains to the kids, is it difficult to, number one, talk about religion? No, because we all know there's something. We don't know what. Now, people might think there is something outside of ourselves that is a God or something of that nature, and still think that this life is the end. And that's, but anybody that's rational can recognize with the design of life that there is something outside of us. So go ahead. I see a question coming.
Well, that is where I think it might be your fault or all of our faults, is that we are depending on people to be rational. Whereas society today, there's so much irrational. The rational is being kicked to the curb, and it's all about being irrational and, worshiping the planet or worshiping there are, no other gods before me. I've read that somewhere. I don't remember, but it's John, it's true. I mean, it's funny how you can be an atheist, yet we've created other gods. And I would honestly say that, stone me if you want, no pun intended, but I think this COVID craze, it has almost become a religion to people.
Yeah, I would say that. And it's interesting, what you referenced a minute ago about all of the things that people will, quote unquote, worship. Is it really has, again, if you go back to the Genesis account, what was the original sin, if you will, was the deification of self. It was the serpent or Satan coming to Adam and Eve and saying, you can be just like God if you will eat of this fruit. It's the deification of oneself. And when you look at society today, what is everybody doing? It's, be true to yourself, speak your truth. It's all of these, right?
What does that mean? Your truth.
It means nothing to the collective, but to the individual. If you can't be true to yourself, and if you can't speak your truth, then you are stepping down from your position as a demigod, so to speak.
Ooh, yeah.
And that is the reality. Is everybody wants to see themselves. You see all the things, from the very, I saw a thing the other day about fat shaming, and I watched it, and it breaks my heart, because you have these people who, the reality is, it's not healthy to be fat. That's just real, objectively true. It is not healthy, and yet these individuals have been preached to love themselves as they currently are, and to not desire anything beyond that they are who they are, and that's perfect, and that's fine. And this is the exact opposite message of Christianity, which is, no, you are not fine who you are. You are destined for hell. That's the bad news. But Christ on the cross said, it is finished. I'm here to rescue you. That's the good news, or the gospel, as they call it. The gospel just means the good news. if you cannot first accept the reality of your need, then you will never accept the reality of you have a savior on your side who is for you, who has done everything needed to gain you entry in. And again, that goes right back to the very beginning of the conversation. Well, how do people drift? Value. It comes down to value. What do you value? And it has to do with your perception of reality. Do I need or do I not need? And if I don't need, then stop preaching at me. Leave me alone. I can do what I want to do because I am my own God.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? It's such a dangerous precedent to set. Doing. I think that started years ago. Hey, do what you feel. Be who you feel. Just. Right. I mean, I got to be honest, John. If I did exactly what I'll say it. I'll throw it out there. If I did exactly how I feel, if I live my life just to do whatever I want, it's kind of dangerous. Like I know I'm able to self-examine myself and be like, my nature is not pure. It's not good. I mean, I think
nobody's is.
No,
nobody.
And I would say, most men, talking, we're both men, and talking from a male standpoint, like male nature is not necessarily pure, and we have to constantly combat it. And there's better things, if we do those things. But can you imagine? I hate this. Oh, just be who you are. Embrace who you are. I hate that approach, because can you imagine? Take a guy who's a serial killer, a guy who likes murdering people, and you just tell him, "Hey, dude, hey, that's who you are. It's okay." That's an extreme example, I know, but you got to be able to contain, restrain yourself from your nature at times, and I just don't think that's preached enough these days.
No, and again, it comes back to, well, why should I restrain myself?
Mm-hmm.
And the Christian response is because you have been saved. That section in Ephesians that I referenced about husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That whole that second half of that book of Ephesians is all about behaviors. Children, obey your parents. Wives, submit to your husbands, which is different than being subjected by your husband. To submit is a willingness to follow the leadership of somebody else. People get caught up in the.
That sounds like toxic masculinity to me, John. I mean,
well, it's kind of a little sidetrack. But when we were studying Ephesians in our home church, and I typically have different people read from that particular section that day. I had my wife read that section. I thought it would be valuable for the group to hear it from her. And I jumped on it real quick. I was all right. That's all well and good. But the thing is, if you have the call of the wife to submit to the husband, immediately following that is the husband, love your wife in the same exact way that Christ loved the church. If the husband is sacrificing himself in all aspects on behalf of this woman, why would you not want to follow an individual like that? Yeah. That's an easy, yeah, I'll follow that guy. He's doing everything. He's making all the right choices. That's who I want to follow. And that's what Christianity ultimately is. It's the family structure itself is a microcosm of Christianity. It's meant to display the gospel in practice. That's what it's for. That's what God designed the family to be about. Anyway, I don't remember what we were talking about.
I don't either, dude. We're all over the place, but I'm fine with it. I knew it would kind of be this way, and just kind of start chatting about these things. You were quoting the Bible. We went into toxic masculinity. We went into submitting. No, I'm just kidding. It's interesting that so many people, okay, this is the greatest book that was ever written, right? And so many people want to look at it as like, oh, that's, that's ancient values. Those don't coincide with how we are today. That, we need to, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't mean anything to today's world.
Right.
Whereas it's like, how far back do you want to take that? Like, do you want to, it almost sounds like book burning in a sense, like, okay, this is the greatest book, the most valuable book that was ever written, where generations of societies have excelled because of its teachings. And now you want to push it all aside, flush it away because there's something in there that triggers you. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, very much so. And again, I think it comes back to a society that has, again, preached the deification of oneself. And so why do I need a God to tell me what to do? I am my own individual, again, demigod, so to speak. So I don't need this outside influence. That's really where it stems from. And they use the guise of, oh, it's outdated. Well, there's plenty of things that are outdated that are of great value. Plenty of things. So that's not the real issue. The real issue isn't that it's outdated. The real issue is that it conflicts with their desire for themselves and what they want to do. Again, back to our wants.
No, it's a very good topic, the whole concept of wanting versus needing, and the desires of your heart, again, versus thy will be done type of thing. I mean, you've been married, a long time now. I'm sure your desires of your heart were to get married, and I'm sure you prayed about getting together with Stephanie, just as an example. Really, it could be a job, could be anything, where you pray, you seek out guidance, you want something to land in your lap, really, but ultimately thy will be done. At the end of the day, you lay your head on the pillow and you're like, okay, I prayed about it, I did everything I could, it wasn't meant to be. Right.
And I think the the human inclination is, well, I prayed about it and it didn't happen. Either I did something wrong or God failed me. One of the two. That's the typical human response. And the reality is this. I mean, you see it happening all over the world today. Bad things happen. That's just the reality. And that is the reality of a world that has pulled away from these things of God. And again, imagine if every husband out there loved his wife as Christ loved the church. Imagine if that were the real case. Would divorce be a major issue in our society? Probably not. Would it still happen? Sure. Yes. But if every husband did that, and if every wife would submit to the leadership of their husband in that manner, I mean, I think it's later in that chapter, it talks about, see that the wife should respect her husband. Think about half of the fights that we've gotten into in our youth. Why was it? Because somebody disrespected. Oh, he disrespected me. That's messed up, and it turns into a fight. What happens it happens on the football field all the time.
Yeah.
He disrespected me. It's go time. So when the Bible says for the woman to respect her husband, it's because it knows that a man needs that affirmation from his partner. Not that she is less than, because it would be fulfilling a need in that would be her form of sacrifice, if you will. And then if he turns around and sacrifices on behalf of her, you have this not vicious cycle, but a cycle nonetheless of two individuals sacrificing on behalf of each other, and it becomes this upward spiral of a fantastic and beautiful relationship. I mean, that's the ultimate. That's what we all want, as I'm gaining this respect. They say behind every great man is a great woman. That's why, because she is encouraging him and respecting him, and pushing him forward to give him the confidence to then go out and do these other things. That's that magical partnership that exists between a husband and a wife. So, and I am blessed in that regard, that I get somebody who does, I say love me, but she loves me in that she respects me, and she will willingly follow my lead. And it puts a huge burden and amount of pressure on me to go, I need to do this right for her.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Again, and it creates this back and forth.
You accept that responsibility. That's tremendous pressure, knowing someone is counting on you.
Right.
And so you better make the right decision. And
Right.
So, no, that is so well said. Absolutely. It's not this, what you're submitting, but it's not this ultra submissiveness. It's this, hey, we're in this, you're the leader. One time I told my girlfriend, I told her, well, we were at another wedding, and the pastor was Major League umpire, was challenged the groom to be a leader in the relationship. And we talked about that after, and she didn't necessarily like that at the time. But then like a year later, she was like, you know what? Because I had told her, I said, the ultimate compliment I think you could give me is that I was a leader. I was a leader in our relationship. And a year later, she came to me and she said, I told you one time that I didn't necessarily like what was said, but I get it now. I totally understand that. And you are a leader. And that was so inspiring to me when it happened.
Right. You were a mile high, right?
Sent me through the roof. Absolutely. But to your point, John, I was like, oh man, what a tremendous responsibility now. I got to guide the ship the right way now. And, we,
right.
It's both of us driving usually, but
correct.
But man, no, what an opportunity to have that, to carry that responsibility, which I think every man should have. That's no, that's awesome. Maybe one of our final things here. There's a lot of suffering going on around the world, in our country, COVID, homelessness, joblessness, what's going on in Afghanistan, the inner cities. I mean, just look at a map, anywhere on a map, really. How do you, John, explain faith to those who suffer daily? How do you go into Afghanistan when they've known nothing else besides, famine and just this awfulness, or you go into, I don't know, Chicago, where there's murders every day? How do you give somebody hope with religion, with faith? How do you educate them? Whereas their entire life has been like searching for something, but at the same time, just suffering.
Right. Let's see. How do I do this without a cliche?
I like cliches.
Yeah, I love cliches and I love quotes, but this is one that I think requires a lot more. So, number one, God's ultimate purpose in his saving of us, of sending Jesus, his ultimate goal in that is not our physical safety and pleasure. His ultimate goal is our eternal safety and pleasure. That is the ultimate goal. That is what he came to save. Because when he left, the Romans were still in charge. And that was they think, you're here to save us, right? From the physical oppression. And it's like, no, my kingdom is not of this world. Ultimately, he came to save us for eternal safety and pleasure at his side. So in the book of Job, as an example, there you have an individual who suffered greatly. And at one point in the book, he starts questioning God, like, man, I was doing everything. I was doing everything right. And God's answer was, okay, where were you when I created the world? Where were you when the mountains rose up out of the sea? Where were you? And he's basically saying, I'm God. I'm God. I know what I'm doing. So there's a little bit of the sovereignty of God that has to play into the equation. Again, assuming that is what one believes. So if this is all true and he is God, then he is sovereign, he is in control, he knows what he's doing. The other thing I think is, suffering is intensely personal. And it's very, very targeted in its in the way that it feels. This is going to sound really silly, but when my gallbladder was acting up and I couldn't sleep at night at all, I was in such pain I couldn't find a comfortable position. There wasn't anything else happening in the world, and that's just gallbladder pain. That's not, my life is an imminent threat right now from, like in Afghanistan, what's going on. So suffering is intensely personal and intensely momentary. And it's hard to see beyond this one moment when it comes to suffering. There's one recorded incident of Jesus crying. And it was when somebody was suffering. It was with Lazarus. You remember the story of Lazarus?
Jesus wept, right? The shortest verse in the Bible. We always memorize that one. And I was memorize one verse in the Bible. But I forget why he was weeping. So educate.
Correct. So Jesus was in a neighboring town, and his friend Lazarus and his I think it was his sister. Anyway, there was the two women there that were with him. And anyway, they send a message to Jesus, hey, Lazarus is sick and he's dying. Please come. Well, Jesus waited. He didn't go. He waited 3 days. Lazarus dies. Then he makes the journey there. After he dies, he gets there. He knows what he's about to do. And he knows why he's about to do. He's about to raise him from the dead, to display his glory, to say, I'm God. I'm in control of life and death. He knows he's going to raise him from the dead. And yet Mary comes running out to him. Why weren't you here? You could have saved him. And it says, Jesus wept. Why would Jesus cry in that moment if he knows in 2 minutes, I'm going to call him up out of the tomb? Why did you just say, hey, Mary, relax. I got this. Ooh. Watch. Why did he cry? Because she was in pain emotionally. He felt that. The God of the universe has empathy for our suffering. And it's easy to forget that because he seems so distant, because we don't hear anything but a still small voice that isn't even really a voice. We forget that. But the reality is the God of the universe does care about our suffering. It says, I can't think of where it is right now, but it says that he knows every tear we cry. He knows that. The book of Revelation talks about every tear will be wiped away and everything sad will become untrue. That's the hope that Christianity offers to somebody who is suffering, is yes, you are suffering. And yes, I'm going to cry right along with you. I'm going to, I love that picture when Pete was in the hospital bed and his wife is laying next to him in the hospital bed. That is a picture of Christ-like love that says, I'm going to lay down right next to you. And you've seen that where somebody is suffering. You don't have to say a word. You just come alongside and you just hold somebody. Yeah. That is what God is like. And it, displayed ultimately in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, meaning, hey, this is scary. I'm going somewhere that I'm unsure of. And it says, you are with me. You are with me. And there is a confidence that can come from that, knowing that it's the God of the universe who is going to go into that dark place with me, knowing that he's leading me through it, because that's what a shepherd does.
Yeah. So my favorite verse in the Bible, hands down, Psalm 23. Dan, John, we hit a lot today, and you know what? I don't think we're out of time. We could keep going, but I don't know. I kind of want to continue this conversation. I don't know when, but I think next time we have a podcast, there'll be still plenty to talk about. And we didn't even we tried to hit some of the things on here, and this is just fun. I mean, it's fun to kind of have structure and have notes and just kind of brainstorm and have a conversation. I definitely love that. So thank you for sharing so much today. I hope you didn't burn too much paper with your preparation there.
No, we didn't even get to anything that I wrote down. So
wait, see, this is what you haven't learned yet. That always happens. You have your game plan, but you usually just freelance it anyway.
Yeah. After the first play, it's all out the window anyway.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched
in the mouth.
That's right. Oh, that's right. You're all big on quotes, and you annoy your employees, if I remember correctly.
Yes, sports analogies and quotes. They're tired of it.
Well, if they get tired of it, send them to me. I love them. I can't get enough of them, man. Sports analogies are they keep the world spinning for me. So, John, thanks for doing this, man. About an hour, man, hour 45. Like I said, we can keep going. Wow. I know you got a family to get home to. All that talk you were saying there. Get home and get home safe.
Yeah.
You know.
There you go. There you go. Good segue.
Oh, good segue, man. Appreciate you doing this. Late August here. This will be out the first week of September. And John, I just appreciate all the support, man. I really do. The constant interaction with me behind the scenes, just giving me support with all this. It honestly does helps keep me going, because there's days when it's just like, oh, another podcast. I know I took a break a few weeks ago, but this really is fun, and
good. I'm glad.
It is a blessing, man. It's a blessing for me to do this.
Yes, I have enjoyed many a podcast. So don't think about quitting just yet. I think you're doing a good job.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. The game will be played already by the time we record, but Pauly Rio, go Rio, man. Beat those Panthers. Do you remember your record against Pauly by chance?
Sophomore year, we beat them I don't remember my freshman year. Sophomore year, we beat them in the regular season, lost in the playoffs on a 43-yard field goal. Yep. Yeah, it still burns. And junior year, sad to say, I can remember the score. It was 81-32. Yeah, buddy. Whoa. We dropped 81 on him, and we were the goal was 100 when we went into the game.
Oh, that's awesome. 81 points. What's up with the 32 though? What happened there?
We went LMU. We didn't care if they scored on occasion.
We're just going. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, we should have scored more, but there was a few occasions where Rick, instead of cutting out to the corner, he turned in to hit somebody while he was running the ball. So
sounds right. That's great.
Yeah, he wanted to run people over, and I respect that when it's Pauly.
You know who was at our table for the Mr. Drain retirement was Jeff Valdez and John Carrillo. I never really knew them much, but it was good to see them.
A couple of warriors on the offensive and defensive line. Those dudes were hard. Valdez, to this day, I'll never forget, because he was on the line. You know, you're not getting to hit as much per se. And if somebody broke out to the edges, Valdez is running towards the play, yelling, "Hold him up, hold him up."
No way.
True story. So
that's fantastic. My kind of guy. I love that. Hold him up.
Yeah, good times.
Oh, well, man, what a group of guys. And like I said, we're gonna try to continue to get them all on. Maybe have each of those guys on here soon. Bazuzzi, yourself, still working on Pete Clark. Got to get him on soon, and he's going to be a blast when we get him on here. But John, thanks for all you're doing. Pleasure. Thanks for the support. Good luck with the attack there in Oregon with the school boards and everything. I know you'll get it done, and we'll have you back on in a few weeks maybe to give us an update on everything, and just take your Bible questions if nothing else.
There you go. I'll be the anti Bill Barnes.
Oh, I can't wait for him to hear this. The anti-Barnes. Yeah, exactly. That's why I told him the other day. We sandwich him in between some good people during the week, and he was like, yeah.
He was what I can't remember what he said about Patricio, Mr. Taylor. I can't remember what he said, but it had me cracking up. He's like, yeah, you had some religious guy on the other weekend.
It cancels out my heathenism or something of that nature. Yeah. Oh, we love Bill. He keeps it fresh. So got to keep working on him. John, thanks again, man. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for interaction and your content today. This has been fantastic. So
definitely.
Let's talk soon, man.
Definitely. Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Take care.
Well, I say it often, but that was an absolute pleasure sitting down with John Lee to discuss, just life in general, but also a lot of theological talk, if you will, some questions regarding religion and faith. I mean, I absolutely enjoyed that. I really, really did. And I hope we can do it again soon. Best of luck, John, in what he's pursuing in up there in Oregon with school boards and everything. I think we should all be rooting for John and other parents out there who are speaking up and doing what they can to combat some of the craziness that's going on in our schools around the country. So John, an avid listener of the program, really, really do appreciate him coming on here and spending some time with me. I hope to talk to him very, very soon. And we'll have to get a few more of his classmates on, just a great group of guys. I know John will be listening every episode throughout our podcast here. One of our top fans, if we do have a top fan, I don't know, it'd be between him and Will Tarico and Maynard Bajorquez. Tough to put those guys in order. Todd Carson as well. A lot of great listeners out there in the Get Home Safe podcast, and I was just overjoyed really to have John back here on the program, and we'll get him back soon. So more great episodes upcoming, guys. Happy September to everyone out there, as this has been released on the first Friday in September, and hope everyone is off to a good start here as it is the fall, right? Maybe not officially, but Labor Day, fall hits. It's the fall season. So anyway, football is here, and hopefully we're talking about a Rio Hondo Prep victory here upcoming with their football season in full swing. But again, John Lee, and to not just John, but his entire family, the Lee brothers, Mr. Lee, John Lee Sr., much love and support to you guys and all you guys, all you've done really for so many people, but also the program, Rio Hondo Prep, the support of this podcast. Can't say it enough. I really do mean all that. So looking forward to more great guests upcoming. We'll continue to record in advance so that we can continue to put out great content for you guys. I remind you guys weekly, if I can, our YouTube channel, of course, jump on there if you want to watch these episodes. Subscribe to the podcast. Get Home Safe Podcast is the official title of our YouTube channel. And Get Home Safe Podcast, you can listen to pretty much anywhere you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever. So give us a like, give us a comment. That always helps with our content. And of course, on social media, you can find us at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as our email address, gethomesafepodcast@yahoo.com for questions, maybe some topics, whatever the case may be. Send them our way. We would love to hear from you guys, just like you hear from us Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We'll be back on Monday with Mark Carson as we recap, hopefully, another Rio Hondo Prep football victory, and look forward to the following matchup upcoming on Friday. And Wednesday is Bill Barnes, of course, on the weekly Wednesday weigh-in, and Friday, hopefully a new guest upcoming that continues to the guys that continue to sit down and record with me. Sorry, a little tongue twister there. But anyway, looking forward to more great guests. That's enough out of me. John Lee, you were fantastic. Thanks again. Good luck up there in the Pacific Northwest. Guys, have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, guys, no matter what you're doing, whether you're out on the town or around in third base, get home safe.